This video I've entitled "Thinking Has Never Been Popular" for lots of reasons. Thinking entails a great deal of energy. Critical thinking involves a good deal of intelligence. There has to be a great design behind the nature of critical thinking. You have to really want to discover, if at all possible, what the truth is. Is there truth? Many great thinkers will tell you that there's no truth. Truth is an illusory concept. There are degrees of truths. We can start from a non-truth and we can work our way through to what some people may call an absolute truth. But invariably, the very definition of truth is always a very sticky one. Many people throughout history have always concluded that people don't want to think. They most definitely don't want to think critically. They don't want to think logically, rationally. They would much rather presume or follow dogma or beliefs. Why? Because it's simple. It's far, far easier than thinking critically with the intention to derive truth. It takes a long, long time, and invariably it's a fruitless endeavour. I've been listening to lots of people of late, and they've all been voicing this. They've been voicing the frustration where anger derives out of, because they're finding it very, very difficult to find truth. We're in an era now with this internet business where so much information is out there, and it's everybody's prerogative to vocalize their opinion or what they consider is a truth which they have found. Invariably, another person's truth isn't your truth. People can derive at certain truths through their experience. If you haven't experienced what they've experienced, then the chances are you're not going to be in agreement with it. When I put my videos up, I often get comments from people saying, on this one I agree with everything you said, or absolutely Aaron, I'm with you on this one. Many of my videos don't get a single comment, and I look at that and I question why that is, and I conclude that it's simply because the people who have viewed my videos haven't had my experience, and so they cannot conclude what I have concluded, or they are not free enough from their biases, from their emotional attachment to certain information which they've been privy to in their lives. They're not free from that to be able to view another perspective with equal energy. This is what philosophy is about, and this is what I do. I'm not a truth seeker. I don't have any biases. I'm not trying to sell anything to you. What I've said in the vast majority of my videos is think for yourself. Really try to be a critical thinker. Absorb all the information, look at it on equal terrain. Don't set out with a bias to reiterate or re-bolster your belief system. This is what so many people do. And this is why so many people find objection with the things I say. Because one day I can look at something from this perspective and the next day I'll look at it from that perspective. And this throws people. They ask themselves, what is Aaron on? How can he think this and how can he think that? How can he say this and how can he say that? Because I don't have any relationship which I'm bound to with any of it. I'm looking at it with equal energy. And because I have a facility which has derived out of the study of philosophy, which enables one to look at any given scenario from as many perspectives as is possible. And so I don't give any particular theory or perspective any more energy than I do the next. What I've noticed with a good number of my friends within this arena and with my associates is that there is a certain something which is being brought about in this particular epoch, in this particular paradigm of a mass influx of information. What is happening now is that we are being privy to the vast deception that we are dwelling within. There is information which one could consider their truth out there, but when you're looking for it, you're going to come upon so much deception, so much stuff which is designed to lead you so far away from you discovering any truth. There are certain organisations which that is their arena. They specialise in misinformation, disinformation, to throw so-called truth seekers off track. When you look at the political agenda, when you look deep inside it, you will discover that there are about 2,000, in America alone, 2,000 top secret societies, entities, facets of government, institutions, collections of people with agendas, whatever you want to call them. It's their intention to take the world in a particular way and to obfuscate anything which they're doing, their entire agenda. They are above any law on the land. They are a law unto themselves. The likes of presidents are so far down the hierarchical system, it's mind-blowing for the person that thinks governments are in control of the world. And so I've said in a recent video that could humanity have ever been another way? And I think that what has actually come about is the result of human nature, what it is to be human, the certain facet of power seeking, control seeking, greed and domination. These powers are far more powerful than those of love, sharing and compassion. Because if you think that compassion is a very, very strong force, or love is a very, very strong force, well, Weigh that up with your everyday life and consider how much of your time is taken up by compassion and love in comparison to how much of your time is taken up by your desire, the compulsion, the necessity to acquire your own personal power and wealth. If you just look at a simple thing as the amount of hours you work in any given week, 40 hours, it's all given to the attaining of your personal wealth and power. And then when you go home, how many of those hours of that precious time are given to compassion and to deep inner standing and love for the people in your local vicinity? And so you can see then that the strive for power is very, very prominent. Now, Nietzsche wrote about the strive for power, and lots of people have misinterpreted it in the way that it's about the domination over people and things. That's only a facet of it, but the true meaning of what Nietzsche was saying when he said that everything is a will to power, it's the will for personal survival. Everything in nature has this, to increase its power exponentially to avoid its demise. And so it's going to do everything it possibly can in its power to keep its power. You see? So it's a fundamental basis of nature, isn't it? And so when I've stated that I personally don't consider that the world could have been any other way, then I think I'm justified in coming to that assessment. Just the simple of things in nature, you will see that what is paramount is the individual power. And so that's what we've got now. And so when people with certain delusions and fantasies about how this world can be want to promote change on a minuscule platform, tiny audiences in lecture rooms across the country, tiny viewership on their videos, the vast majority of people are not interested in the slightest about their own salvation. They're only interested in their own comfort on a day-to-day basis. They don't want to contemplate the future. They're not interested really in investing a great deal in the future. They want it now. Most of the world has fallen back upon its primal brain, that of the reptilian brain. Over the reptilian brain you have the mammalian brain, and over that you've got the cerebral cortex, where most of the thinking goes on. Where people, they don't want to reside in the facility which gives rise to thinking. They want to reside in the arena which gives rise to instant gratification. That, my dear fellows, is the reptilian brain. And so you can see then what's happening to the world. It seems to me that the human being is devolving. They got to a state whereby this cerebral cortex was created and man started to think in wonderful ways and diverse ways. But now, and I don't know whether it's not always been the case, because all of the information that I've acquired in relation to this states that man has always been the same. The vast majority of man, there's only ever been a very, very small percentage of people that want to critically think. that want to create, that want to design, that think so far into the future, and they plan and they structure. This is the human being's downfall as far as the masses go, because we are dwelling in an arena where we're only looking for comfort, whereas the people at the top of this hierarchical system, they never sleep from their machinations of where they are taking the world and the human being. They never sleep. Even when their conscious mind is closed down in sleep, their unconscious mind is contriving more plans, what they're going to be carrying out. And so you see them. If in America alone there are 2,000 top secret organisations that nobody can penetrate outside of those circles, and even these organisations such as the CIA, for instance, they can't be penetrated from outside of their own body of information. Many presidents, President Kennedy, he wanted to dismantle the CIA, if any of you remember. And so you could easily consider that that was a good enough reason for him to die. These organisations have become so powerful that it's such a hierarchical system, people. This is why I'm convinced it will never be stumbled, because it starts at the very top and it's tiered like the proverbial hierarchical pyramid of power. And each stage down, man has sold his soul to Mephistopheles for his portion of self-aggrandizement, of increased power and wealth and domination over certain sectors of human society. They are not about to give that up. Look at police chiefs, look at politicians, even look at the local bobby on the street predominantly. They are so immersed in their own fulfillment of the strive for power. They've got a smidgen of this power which is given to them by the organisation which they are employed by. And they're going to do most anything the organisation says, even if it's a detriment to his fellow man, because he is feathering his nest and his ego. He's self-aggrandizing, and he doesn't want to give that up to become a nobody when he can be a little bit of a somebody in virtue of the enormous power that he can call upon with one radio call. You see, when you look at the psychology of that, the individual doesn't want to give their power up. And so this is why the world will never change. It will always be under this shroud of secrecy and manipulation and seeking of power. And so for us then, down here, at the bottom of it, completely on the bottom of it, I'm not even a traffic warden. I don't have any power whatsoever in that regard, where I can enforce you to make a payment to the government which employ me, and they give me my little peaked cap and my uniform to make me feel proud about my achievement. I don't even have that power. And you know what? I don't want it. Because I have a greater power than that. A power that is far more expansive than that. And that's the power of knowing that I am. and the acquisition of knowledge and experience which I've gained about all that. And I look at it and I see it's entirely superfluous in the long run. And I don't even believe it is that satiating, because it doesn't give rise to peace. It doesn't give rise to love. It doesn't give rise to the humanisms that are the so-called better qualities: compassion, sharing, respect, and all these sort of things. Freedoms. It doesn't give rise to that. When you're up there, when you're in one of these positions, you want to close all that down. You're not interested in compassion. You're not interested in sharing. You want to give as little as possible to keep as much for yourself as possible. And when you look at this hierarchical system, you can see why the wages are becoming less and less, and the oppression is becoming more and more, and the control is becoming ever increasingly expansive. It's like the vast majority of the human being is being squeezed like in some sort of a vacuum, whereby there's a pressure squeezing down, squeezing down, squeezing down, till in the end we'll barely have any freedoms at all outside of our own consciousness. Furthermore, what I'd like to say is the main reason why I wanted to speak about this, because friends around me and associates around me are in this arena whereby they are being greatly compromised, and you could say that we're all sharing in this dark night of the soul. I was speaking to Paul about it yesterday, and I've spoken about it many times, and I've done my own videos where I've been questioning who am I and what is this world, and it's an illusion, it's a hologram, it's a dream, and all this sort of stuff. When you get into a certain arena, when you're privy to a certain amount of information as well as experience, you have to have the experience, otherwise the information is of no value, because you do not know it. When you've experienced it, then you know it, and then your experience will be in compliance with certain information which you have acquired, you see. But if you're just acquiring information, like I've been saying, there is no point to it. Because what happens is the mind begins to get sick. And I've said this in lots of videos. Those of you who have been with me some time, you may recall, when people go down the rabbit hole and they don't have the great inner strength and constitution to be able to keep level-headed, that is a very dangerous position to be in. Because you get sucked into it and you will never be able to come out of it, because you've lost the direction back. Like Hansel and Gretel on the first time they went out. Did they lay anything when they went out on the first time? But if they never laid anything, like, the first time they laid bread, didn't they? And the bread got eaten by the birds, and so they couldn't find their way back. And the second time they did it by stones, so they could. So what we have to do is we have to lay anchor, people. We have to lay anchor. Like divers do when they go pothole diving. They will have a cord so they can find their way back. You have to keep this return facility available to you, because if you don't, you get lost down there, you're in the abyss. And when you look in the abyss, or look into the abyss, then the abyss will look back at you. And this gives rise to mental dispositions which are very unhealthy. I've seen traces of it in my own mind. I've been to this proverbial abyss. I've looked into the face of it, and it's looked back at me. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do in the abyss. For those of you who are really interested in what I'm saying now, there is a video by Jed McKenna, and it's called The Truman Show. In that video, he depicts Truman where he realizes he's in a show. And so he sets out to escape. And he comes to the edge in the boat, doesn't he? And he goes up the stairs and he goes out that door. Finally, Jed McKenna says, that wasn't the end. The end was, which could be the only end, that Truman never actually continued to go outside. He looked out, he spent a brief moment there, and he discovered that there's nothing there. So what did he do? He came back in, he closed the door, he shrugged, and he said to himself, it is what it is. Dream, illusion, fantasy show, bubble. It is what it is, because there's no escape. If you try to escape, you go out into the abyss. That's all there is, you see. And so people's minds, they can get contorted and twisted, and they will be lost deep within negative emotions about what's going on in this thing, because they'll be focusing on the negative aspect of it. And one of the things I've always maintained, that we need to keep balance. I'm not averse to the negative aspects of it, because the negative aspects of what you will learn here in this dimension are of great value, but you cannot dwell within them. Fear it spoil your spirit and ruin this life for sure, and break down the rationale within your mind. You cannot live within that negative aspect, and you cannot live within the wholesome positive aspect where it's all love. It's not real in this dimension. It isn't all love. It is 50-50. Look around you. Open your eyes. Any of you people that fantasize about this love nonsense, it's just because you're in denial of the negative things. Because you don't like the negative, because you're not strong enough for it. You're too weak. You should immerse yourselves in the negative from time to time. And if you're strong enough, you will see that in actual fact, it's not entirely negative. If you have the gumption to be able to transmute what you have experienced in that negative realm into something positive. We can experience many, many things that are terrible to us, and most people go, I'm never going back there again, that was so terrible, oh I'm terrified, and I'm so fear-based now because of that, because you've not transmuted the message, the information, the energy. You've got to transmute it, because when you transmute it, it empowers you. You see? And then you become less and less afraid of the negative. And you look at it and you go, it's all part of me. How can I be afraid of me? If I'm afraid of me, I'm in denial of certain aspects of me, aren't I? So I'm a liar. I've become a negator. I'm a self-negator, because I don't want to accept the true depths of what I am and the potential. And any of you that doubt me for an instant on this, you've not read enough spiritual literature, because they all say it. Every single one of them will address it at some stage. And so, what do we do? I find myself in an arena whereby I have lost the energy for the Matrix. I used to have an enormous amount of energy for the Matrix, and this is why I achieved what I achieved whilst I was within it. And now I'm without it. I cannot find any energy whatsoever to go back into it. And so, like Truman, when he goes up the stairs and out the door, I'm still out that door. But I know I can't stay there forever. And I have to come back in. And it's kind of like, okay, it is what it is. There's certain rules and laws within it that you have to be in compliance with. What alternative do people like me have? I can become a vagabond. I can say to myself, I'm not getting involved with that Matrix, and then I can become a beggar, like many people do. That's about the only alternative. The other alternative is that if I continued to do this and promoted myself far and wide enough, then maybe I could earn a living from what I'm doing. So therefore I wouldn't need to go back into the Matrix. I could just be speaking from the Matrix about the abyss, about the event horizon. This event horizon which is round the black hole. Once you go past the event horizon into a black hole, there ain't no coming back. But fortunately, for most, when you go over the event horizon from the Matrix into the abyss, you can come back. And so you come back wiser, and you come back calmer and more resigned and much more philosophical about the whole thing. And you just look. That's basically all you want to do. You just want to look because you find it so amazing. It's all incredible. If you can come away from it, I guess it's a little bit like an astronaut when they look down at the Earth, if indeed they ever have. What must they be feeling? They're out of the Earth's atmosphere. They're in space. They're in the abyss, aren't they? Of nothingness. They're there. Without any of this spiritual training. They've left Earth. My God, what an emotional pull that must be. It must be terrifying. As well as exhilarating. But I'm pretty sure that the exhilaration wouldn't be as profound until you're back on Earth. Because if you're up in space, there's certain... You couldn't be 100% exhilarated because you still carry the uncertainty and the fear of never returning, you see. And so this is like then going out of the Truman Show. You can be out there for a while and you can observe the world from that perspective. But just like an astronaut, they can't stay floating in space looking down at Mother Earth. It's what we belong to. And so we have to come back. When an astronaut comes back, if you've listened to the speeches given by Buzz Aldrin, what they have to say about that experience. Was it Buzz who became an alcoholic? Because his mind couldn't deal with it, you see. Too much information, too much emotions going on. Back on earth, making certain realizations and thinking to himself, I'm one of the very, very few. I've walked on another planet. I've walked on the moon. I've been up in space. Nobody can understand me. Nobody can ever share that experience with me. And so it becomes a very, very lonely place. And so people then, lots of you maybe, who for some reason have fallen down a rabbit hole. You fall down it. It's not a conscious thing that we do. If it was a conscious thing that we do, then it would appear that many, many people would be doing it. But you see, it involves thinking and inquiring and being open-minded, being afraid, being terrified, having your whole world torn apart. But you're prepared to do that because you want some answers. And so we're looking for the answers, but we don't really find any until at a certain stage in our personal development we make a certain realization that there are no answers as such, and that which you have been looking for has been here all along. You are it. It's you that you've been looking for. Whatever it is that you think you want to fill this hole, it isn't in aliens and in Illuminati and all the machinations that's going on around and in this hologram, because that is a fantasy. That's the illusion. The only reality is that you are. You are consciousness. And when you look at that, you see, the penny dropped with me when I was watching Osho one day, because I was fervently involved in the acquisition of knowledge, and I did it for 5 years solid. But it was on about the 4th year when I was watching Osho, who is one of the gurus which I hold in very, very high esteem. And he was sitting before his people, and his people said to him, Osho, how can we find enlightenment? And he sat there and he said, you will never find enlightenment when you're looking for it out there. Well, what do you mean? You know, we're searching for this information, we come to you for information, and we're trying to gain this wisdom and everything. And he says, you will only find enlightenment when you realise that you are it. That you don't need anything else. You are everything. Why are you everything? Because you are a shard of consciousness. And consciousness encapsulates everything. There would be no galaxies, no cosmos, if it wasn't for consciousness. If it wasn't for something to have observation of it, you see. You have that facility. You can make inquiry, you can do math and science, and you can make certain discoveries about all that out there. Who is it that's discovering all that out there? It's you in here. This brain is facilitating you to acquire this knowledge. What is at the root of it? What gives rise to the potential of the brain? It's the consciousness. And we're all conscious. And so I just went, holy fuck. I've been running around the world with great haste, climbing mountains and scuba diving on wrecks and skiing down dangerous slopes and trekking through intrepid jungles with all different sorts of venomous creatures and all this sort of stuff. Gathering up information so I can feel whole, satiated. And it wasn't until I stopped doing all of that and I was just listening to some old man that I finally realised that all of that was just partaking in the fun aspect of what this paradigm has to offer. But it wasn't going to lead me to myself. What leads you to yourself is sitting down and contemplating the self. Meditating upon the self, clearing the mind and realizing the self, which is a pure, unadulterated clarity of nothingness. That's what you are, you see. Isn't it a paradox? You think you're this body, you think you're this brain, you think you are this experience, when in actual fact all that diminishes. It will all go back to whence it came, in the ground, in the constant toiling of the circle of life. But one thing out of that will remain is the awareness. And so, once you've cracked that little nut, once you really grasp that which I am, then you'll be settled. And you'll just look at this with resignation. You can still find joy. You can find immense joy within it. The resentment and the hate and the frustration, all of that stuff subsides because you know it pertains to the illusion. And it doesn't matter what happens to this body, it's never going to change that I am. And so when you have this certain invincibility, as far as that's concerned, then you don't take this thing so serious. You don't take the negative aspects of it so serious. Instead, you open yourself up to looking at the wonder and the amazement and the beauty and how stimulating potentially it can be. And then you start to try to engage with people and you want to share it, and it's kind of like, hey, do you know about this? And do you know about that? But time and time again, people don't. And not only do they not know, they don't want to know. And so again, you have to have a certain resignation for that. And so you look around. Does anybody want to share? And that's where I find myself, you see. And so that's why I do these videos, because I've found a few gems and it's wonderful, truly wonderful. Because had I not have found these gems, you can see that I'd still be residing in the pure abyss where there's nobody to talk to, because it's all you. And so, by way of finishing up this video then, to look at a deep, fundamental aspect of philosophy, you can see then why consciousness has created this illusion. Because when you are the eternal isness, and there's nothing per se in it, save for potential of everything, well, what are you going to do? You're going to capitalise on that potential and begin to create. And so this is what we can do. We can begin to create. And when you create, it feels wonderful. Why does it feel so good when you create something? You have great satisfaction, even from something as silly as digging the garden and planting a few seeds. You look at it and you go, wow, I feel good. Why? Because you have exercised your godliness. You have brought about certain changes, and you are turning probability into a certain reality. You have dry seeds and you have untoiled soil. You toil the soil, you make it fertile for the seeds. You put the seed in the soil and then you add the magic ingredient, water, and then you watch your creation grow. And that is immensely satisfying, isn't it? If you've got a business, you watch that grow. When you have children, you watch them grow. When you are partaking in a certain sport or something like this, you watch yourself grow. It's all about growth. And so when Nietzsche said that it's all about a will or a strive to power, what did he really mean? It's about personal growth. This thing is about personal growth. Some of us grow in a spiritual way, and others grow in a material, matrixial way. And we don't need to state who they are. And so you look around and you go, well, it's just probability. God consciousness via 7.5 billion human beings is creating their worlds, what they want their worlds to be. God consciousness has given us the facility to be able to do that, to choose between the so-called good and evil. It's all there. You pick eclectically, randomly, what you want to create. All you got to do is think about it and then put some energy into it, and then lo and behold, you would have made something manifest in this material world. You see, it derived out of nothing, just like the world and the universe derived out of nothing. In the beginning there was a word, and God said, let there be this and let there be that. Can't you see that you do exactly the same? You can wake up one morning and say, let there be this and let there be that. It won't just magically manifest. You've got to go with your spade and dig the soil. You've got to buy the seeds. You've got to plant them, and then you've got to add the magical ingredient. And then you can watch your creation grow. Have a great day, people.